Downtown Metropolis, the issue begins at a public conference in front of LexCorp Industries. Luthor offers a heartwarming speech welcoming Bruce Wayne and Wayne Enterprises into a partnership that would benefit the world. Clark and Diana notices the crowd's admiration towards Luthor. Bruce steps up into the mic and in one heartwarming speech has regained the crowd's admiration. Luthor welcomes Bruce Wayne and his entourage into LexCorp. Wayne takes a second to radio his team members, asking if everyone is in position. Clark and Diana are in the front, Shazam and Cyborg are disguised amongst the crowd in the rear. Barry and Jessica are on standby, but the large crowd draws out Jessica's fears and the ring begins to murmur. Aquaman is on the rooftop, ready to strike at any moment. Luthor invites Bruce Wayne and only Mr. Wayne down into his private research and development facilities. They pass the facility where Bizarro was grown, and Luthor admits that he grew attached to the one that Ultraman had killed. Luthor is growing another one. They enter his private facilities where we are introduced to Lena Luthor, Lex's wheelchair-bound sister. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, Aquaman witnesses a suspect jumping off a building. Arthur radios in to the Justice League. Superman is the first to react, but the suspect manages to make contact with his target. The building blows up. Superman gets violently thrown to the pavement. Lena is knocked off her wheelchair, and the suspect named Neutron emerges from the dust and rubble in front of Luthor, his kill target. The rest of the Justice League converge on the suspect, but Lex races towards something that he holds dear. The comms announce the storage unit X has been breached. Canister VA-13 has been ruptured. Exposure to the Amazo Virus is imminent. Infection begins now. The issue begins 24 hours after the Amazo Virus has been exposed to the city. 3 sickly civilians wander in front of LexCorp towers, gathering leftover money from the streets. Unbeknownst to them, Batman and Superman have spotted them. The 2 heroes arrive and announces their presence. Batman demands that the 3 civilians leave the money on the streets and give themselves up. But instead of surrendering themselves to the heroes, one civilian blasts the 2 heroes with his newfound meta powers of fire. He gets subdued fast, but his friends start to show off a different power. A black hole forms and begins to suck everything into it. But the man begins to suffer from a heart attack and the black hole dissipates. Batman heroically uses his electro gauntlets to supercharge the man's heart back to life. After the heroes got the situation under control, Superman warns Batman of his broken visor that keeps himself safe from the virus. Superman isn't human, so the virus has not affected him yet, or maybe not ever. Batman states that the seal isn't broken and they must go on to LexCorp Towers to find Patient Zero, or the rest of their friends in the Justice League may die very soon. In an undisclosed location, the Justice League along with Luthor's assassin lays bedridden due to their exposure to the virus. Wonder Woman stands healthy and is unaffected. She informs Luthor that the government agent Steve Trevor will be arriving shortly for questioning. Luthor gets defensive, but Diana reassures him that there will be no blame game. Their only objective right now is containment. Shortly after, Steve Trevor arrives and Luthor has some explaining to do. We discover that over 520 people have been affected by the virus. The city has been evacuated thanks to the Justice League, but during the evacuation, most of the League was exposed to the virus and fell ill. Batman and Superman is safe, and so is Wonder Woman. When asked why Wonder Woman isn't affected by the virus, Luthor states, because she is a god. We further discover that the virus originally came from Dr. Anthony Ivo's Amazo android. Luthor salvaged the body and isolated an enzyme that he uses to create a patch that would depower criminal metahumans, keeping them under control. But Luthor's new creation proves to be too controversial for the White House to approve, so the idea and the virus was shelved under LexCorp's security vault, but the assassination attempt on Luthor's life breached the vault and accidentally released the gas. The virus would evidently evolve, giving normal people random meta powers, but after 24 hours, the blood becomes black as ink and their hearts will stop functioning. The virus is now airborne, but Luthor can fix this outbreak, but they need to find Patient Zero, who is still presumably wandering around in Metropolis. The president has grounded all planes in America, but that didn't stop the airborne virus. It has reached New York, Boston, and has now reached Central City. Against advisement from the White House, Steve Trevor decides to offer Luthor everything he needs to cure the infected. In an unknown place, a shadowy figure named Bullet is hired to kill Luthor, but many more were hired as well. Payment is payable to whoever can kill the target. Back on street level, Batman and Superman races towards LexCorp Towers aiming to find Patient Zero. Not long after, Batman states, "I think we found Patient Zero." The patient states, "No, I've found you." Downtown Metropolis, Batman and Superman has stumbled upon Patient Zero. We discover that this infected individual is a LexCorp research pathologist named Dr. Armand Icarus. The Doctor witnesses Superman's heat vision and evolved that ability which he uses to blast the 2 heroes. Shortly after, because of Superman's flight powers, the Doctor grows a pair of wings and flies away. Across town, Lex Luthor informs his worried sister that he has everything under control. He explains how metahumans are a major threat to personal safety in North America, and that no jail could ever hold them for long. These escaped metahuman convicts would go on and continue their criminal activities. There has to be a hero to defend the weak and defenseless. It isn't the Justice League, it is himself, Lex Luthor. But Lena Luthor knows her older brother well. She knows when he is lying. She demands the truth as to why he created the virus, but her questions fall upon deaf ears as Lex kisses her on the forehead and makes his way to the exit doors where Captain Cold is waiting. Cold inadvertently accuses Lex of the virus and all of the chaos it has wreaked, which results in Luthor grabbing Cold and putting him into his place. Captain Cold works for Luthor, not the other way around, and snarky comments like that will not go unnoticed. Suddenly, a violent explosion blows Cold and Luthor unconscious. A new mercenary named Bullet is here to pick up the bounty on Luthor's head. Before anyone could recover, this new mercenary aims his firearm at Luthor's head and takes a shot. During their pursuit, Batman and Superman manages to track Patient Zero to an abandoned building. Without notice, Patient Zero appears out of the shadows and attacks. Luckily for our heroes, Wonder Woman was hot on Patient Zero's trails and finally manages to chase him down. The two goes at it, with Superman flying in to help. During the chaos, Batman gets blasted by Patient Zero's heat vision. After shaking the cobwebs from his head, the Dark Knight discovers that he has now been exposed to the virus. On the streets of Metropolis, the powerhouse couple of Superman and Wonder Woman has exerted their strength, and yet Patient Zero is still holding his own. Batman, after being infected with the Amazo Virus, conjures up his newfound powers and releases a devastating beam of sound wave at Patient Zero, knocking him out cold. Before he passes out, Batman says that Luthor has been lying to the Justice League. Luthor cannot be trusted. Batman begins to hear a voice in his head, but he passes out before the Dark Knight can give further details to his teammates. As Superman and Wonder Woman flies away with Batman and Patient Zero, a crowd infected with the virus begins to march towards the medical emergency camp. The scene jumps to the aftermath between the mercenary Bullet and Lex Luthor. We discover that Captain Cold had protected Luthor with a cold shield, effectively rendering a headshot useless. The two hired muscle exchange fire, but ultimately Captain Cold takes the upper hand and freezes the mercenary in place. Luthor rises to his feet and now demands answers. Moments later, Luthor injects the mercenary Neutron with a substance that manages to wake the patient up. Neutron is given dire news of his situation and that he will die soon unless Luthor saves him. But for that to happen, Luthor demands the name of the person that wants him dead. Suddenly, Superman and Wonder Woman barges in with the infected Batman and Patient Zero. Luthor begins to synthesize a cure via the blood of Patient Zero, but to no avail. Patient Zero does not hold the key to their salvation, but Luthor has been holding out. He demands for a sample of Superman's blood, stating that it could hold a cure to the virus. We discover that the virus was actually used on Superman 4 years ago in an attempt to render him human. But somehow the Man of Steel never fell ill, which led to Luthor shelving the Amazo Virus project on ice. This new revelation angers Kal-El as he begins to take his frustrations out on Lex. Wonder Woman manages to calm him down, but suddenly an echo sound blast takes out the wall with Luthor, Wonder Woman, and Superman with it. Batman emerges from the rubble along with Patient Zero and the rest of the Justice League. Collectively, they speak. You are an odd species. You believe that you are the dominant ones. You are incorrect. After shaking off a massive soundwave blast, Luthor, Wonder Woman, and Superman engage the Justice League, who are still under the influence of Patient Zero. The Amazo Virus has gained sentience and is now out to spread its influence across the world. They show very little interest in Wonder Woman and Superman, but Luthor, with the newest member of the Justice League, can be exposed and influenced by Amazo. Luthor will join them or he will die. Wonder Woman, knowing that their options are very limited, demands for Superman to trust Luthor and his plans. Luthor has only one more chance to prove himself. Wonder Woman engages the infected Justice League, but the Flash, with his super speed, easily overpowers her. Meanwhile, Superman arrives to give Luthor a sample of his blood in hopes that the billionaire could find a cure. The situation gets worse as the infected civilians has arrived and breached the walls of the emergency camp. The Flash continues to pummel the Princess of Paradise Island, but suddenly he gets blasted from behind and the Flash turns into a human popsicle. Steve Trevor and his army has enlisted the aid of Captain Cold to rescue the uninfected. Elsewhere, Superman holds off a horde of civilians while Luthor creates a cure from the Man of Steel's blood. We discover that Luthor can indeed create a cure in minutes, but it will take days to create a cure for everyone that is infected. Unfortunately, they don't have days. Time is against them and they need a cure now. An unlikely team-up would present itself as Captain Cold and Wonder Woman battles back-to-back against their foe. Cold, without Superman's moral compass, blasts Patient Zero with his freeze gun, but to Wonder Woman's surprise, she notices that the other infected pause for a brief moment. Superman never used his freeze breath against the infected for fear that he would hurt the innocent. The Man of Steel with his super hearing now understands their weakness and leaves Luthor behind to target Patient Zero with his cold breath. He arrives in time and, with his super breath, Supes manages to freeze Patient Zero in place. The rest of the infected falls like dominoes and the battle is over. Days later, and the Justice League along with the rest of the population have been cured. Luthor's vaccine is being mass-produced and is being shipped around the world to contain this threat. But there is a new threat on the horizon. 3% of the cured populace has retained their powers. More metahumans are now free in the world. On the bright side, there will be more heroes. But light and darkness comes hand in hand and more villains will surely rise. Elsewhere, Patient Zero is held captive with Luthor and Superman looking on. The cure did not work on this infected individual. Luthor concludes that the doctor is gone and all that is left is this infected sentient virus. After being congratulated by the president for the cure, Luthor is now in charge of keeping Patient Zero captive for testing. Further testing will yield more knowledge of this virus and thus preventing any potential further outbreaks. The patient looks up and speaks to Luthor. He says that the doctor is gone and that this flesh is now his incubator. He is still mutating and one day Luthor will fall prey to the virus. He will spread. He will kill. He is Amazo. Meanwhile, Neutron is cured from the virus but is still sick and will die soon. He tells Steve Trevor that he wants to make a deal with Luthor. Neutron wants something before he dies. For this trade, he will expose the person who placed the hit on Luthor. Steve Trevor, while reaching for his gun, states, "I guess it's true. If you want something done right, you have to do it yourself." On the League satellite, Jessica Cruz expresses her concerns on not being in control. The Flash introduces her to a man that knows a lot about power rings. Barry Allen introduces her to Green Lantern Hal Jordan. The ex-Justice League member states, "So where's Batman? I want to see the look on his face when he hears Green Lantern's back." What's going on, guys? Welcome to Comic Island. My name is Joey and thank you so much for watching our Justice League The Amazo Virus complete story. This story takes place in the pages of the Justice League between issues 35 and issues 39. This entire story doesn't have an everlasting impact on the world of comics, but I believe some of these mini stories deserve a bit of love. So I hope you enjoyed this Justice League Amazo Virus complete story. You can find my review of these issues in the single issue reviews found on the YouTube channel or on our website. You can also connect with me and Arden via our Facebook and Twitter page. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time in another complete story video.